Hi, and welcome to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Taarika Foundation focused on youth mental health. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to let you all know that all content that is found in our podcast is created for informational purposes only. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, treatment, or therapy. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition, and never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard in this podcast. Thank you so much, and without further ado, let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're diving into the profound connection between our body and our mind, and we'll explore how to regulate stress and anxiety and improve productivity and focus. For a lot of us in high school, we're used to powering through. We treat our bodies like they're just machines to carry our brain to class. But our guest today, Miss Sonali Bhat, advocates that if we actually learn how to listen to our physical stress, we can handle the pressure way better. She's the founder of Earth and Ether, and she works specifically with somatic healing. Miss Sonali, it's an honor to have you here today.
Thank you, Seerat. I am so happy to be here talking to all of you, and I'm so excited about our conversation today.
Wonderful. So let's start from the beginning. What was the journey that led you to found Earth and Ether? And specifically, what do these elements represent? Why did you choose to bridge Earth and Ether?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, for as long as I can remember, I wanted my work to mean something more. I wanted it to matter, and not just in a creative or professional sense, but I wanted my work to genuinely touch the lives of people. And even though I had that idea, I wasn't sure what that means in terms of practice. My background is design, I've been an accessory designer. And in 2025, I quit my full time job in Seattle and moved to the Bay Area due to some family circumstances. And at that time, it gave me about a couple of months to really self reflect about what I really wanted to do. And one of the things that has been a very big part of my life has been classical Indian dance. I've been a dancer since I was very little. Dance has been a very big part of my life. And I am also a pranic healer, which is an energy healing. And that's when I thought about how I can somehow fuse dance or movement into healing. And that is when the idea of earth and ether came about. And you were asking about the name. I believe that healing should be holistic, both physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, on all levels. And earth to me represents the physical body, and ether represents the energy body or the etheric body. And hence, earth and ether came about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I really like how you said that Earth represents like the physical bodies and ether is like your like spiritual or like energy body, I think. So, yeah, and I think that resonates with what Dharka does because we focus on supporting the whole child, so not just like one area of like academic or like emotional health, but we aim to support the entire child.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you. And a core pillar of your work is healing trauma through somatic practices. So, for people who might be new to this term, could you explain what somatic healing is and how working with the body can address emotional trauma?
Yes, of course. Before I can answer the question, let's define, like you said, what somatic means. And then we're also going to define what trauma means. So, somatic is a word that comes from the Greek word called soma, which basically means body. And somatic healing refers to a body based approach that recognizes that our bodies don't just carry us through life, they also store all of our life experiences, all of the emotions, the stress, the anxiety, the trauma, everything basically we feel on a day to day basis, our bodies are holding that. And going back to trauma, when people think of the word trauma, they often think of something very major, like a life changing event, like an accident or an assault. And while all of those absolutely matter, trauma doesn't have to be big to affect the body and the nervous system. Think about an everyday stressor, like you're stuck in traffic. There is bumper to bumper traffic, and you have to get somewhere. You have to get to a class or to work, and you're getting really frustrated because the traffic is not moving. And at that point of time, what happens is your heart starts to race, your breathing becomes shallow, and your perhaps your shoulders become tight, your jaws clench because you're so frustrated. Why isn't the traffic moving? Now, eventually the traffic moves, right? But you arrive where you need to be and you jump straight into your day without even giving your body a full chance to fully reset. So, do you see what happened? You got into a moment of stress, your body reacted, but everything was okay, but your body didn't get a chance to fully reset. And many more everyday stresses. Another one for, I would say, people your age also is we're all going through so many emotions on a day to day basis as you're growing up, right? And you may have someone tell you, an authority figure or a teacher or someone, oh, you're overreacting, Seerat, right? Now, what happens is that when someone invalidates our feelings, you tend to suppress your emotions, right? And you disconnect from the emotion that you were feeling in order to suppress that emotion. And again, for different people, different things may happen to their body when that happens. And all of these suppressed, unresolved emotions in your body may manifest as jaw tension or fatigue or shallow breathing and things like that. So, yeah, so somatic healing, what it does is it brings awareness back to the body. And the first thing is when you are aware of what you're feeling and which part of your body is affected, just by bringing awareness, the healing can begin.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. So you mentioned that like not you don't need a really big like traumatic event in life. You just it's just like a simple or like day-to-day like event where you feel stressed, and in that case like maybe you're stressed for a few minutes and then something happens, like the event situation goes back to normal, but your body hasn't had the time to reset and recover from what it just went through, and then that blocks it. And also like when you have suppressed emotions, then you mentioned that somatic healing can help open it up.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, there are so many different somatic techniques to do that. But I think the very first thing is realizing that first of all, it's okay to feel what you're feeling, validate your own emotion, and then bring awareness to which part of your body is storing that. And there's so many different somatic techniques that we can go into later on that help actually process these emotions so we can get rid of all of those issues that have manifested in our physical body.
Yeah, and I think this highlights like the connection between your mind and your body. So like mental health and physical health, like if you have some emotions that are like being blocked, that definitely impacts your physical health. I think as this shows that they're connected, but usually we end up treating like physical health, mental health as two separate things that don't affect each other. So from your influence, how do they actually affect each other? And then how does our physical state dictate our mental clarity and the other way around?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because, like you said, the physical and mental health are deeply interconnected, even though we tend to treat them as separate. Now, as we touched earlier, the body doesn't just process life through the mind, right? Our experiences, our emotions, all of the unresolved anger and everyday stresses don't stay confined to the brain. They get stored in the body, right? So, particularly in the muscles and the connective tissue, which is also called the fascia. From a somatic perspective, chronic stress can show up as, like I mentioned earlier, tight shoulders. For example, for the longest time, I didn't even know that I had a habit of tensing my shoulders. When I used to go for my Bharatanatyam practices, the biggest criticism I used to receive is, Sonali, relax your shoulders. And I didn't even know that I had the habit of doing that. And similarly, and it was obviously some kind of an unprocessed stress or emotion or nervousness in my head that caused me to do that. And from a healing perspective, from a pranic healing perspective, as I talked about, I do energy healing as well. It is understood that all the imbalances that happen in our body first appear in the energy body, right? And before they manifest physically. And a lot of the skilled practitioners may observe disturbances in the energy field around an organ before the symptoms actually show up in the organ. So, now talking about the mind and body connection, we're looking at from a somatic perspective, all your emotions showing up in your physical body, and from the energy perspective, your repetitive thoughts and repetitive feelings, which are energy at the end of the day, are showing up in your energy body and in turn manifesting in your physical body, if that makes sense. I know I made it sound very complicated. And the reverse also happens, right? So, for example, if you get sick or injure yourself, from a healing perspective, from an energy healing perspective, let's say you hurt your knee. So your physical knee is hurt, but the energy body around your knee is also affected. And obviously, when your body is affected, it affects your mood, it affects your mental clarity, your emotional resilience, and your overall sense of being. So the mental and physical health are not two separate systems. They're constantly in conversation with each other. And that's why healing has to be holistic. It cannot be treated separate.
Yeah, I think that's very like eye-opening. Like, for example, you mentioned if it's like from your physical body to your mental or like energy body. This is something we've all experienced before. If we get hurt, we get sick, then obviously our mood goes down. Like, oh my God, I can't breathe from one nostril, or my nose hurts. That's one. But then also the other way around, like maybe if there's like a emotion that's like really closed off. I think I've heard these before. Then that definitely like manifests in your body, and sometimes it closes in like some body parts, like you mentioned shoulders. I know some like a lot of back pain relates to these. So I think that's really fascinating how we can treat physical pains by looking deeper than our physical body.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Yeah, and then switching gears a little bit to, I've noticed a lot these days that like middle schoolers, high schoolers, college students too, like all of us are balancing like impossible schedules. So what types of physical activities would you recommend for a youth to try who are short on time, but to also relieve?
Again, really good question. So, I would say, as I had mentioned earlier, there are so many different physical somatic movements that one can do to let the nervous system know that they're safe. So they are not stuck in the survival mode. But before I go into any physical activity, I will say that the very first thing that anyone can do, especially if your schedule is crazy and you're running between things, even before you start anything physical, is breath work. And breath work doesn't have to be complicated, just something very simple. Between classes, find maybe a quiet space, just a few moments, sit down. You can keep your eyes open or closed and start to just notice your breathing without any judgment. And then you can do something as simple as just breathing in for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, and then slowly exhaling for 6 counts. And you can repeat this for 3 to 4 cycles. And every time you exhale, just let your body relax a little bit more and bring awareness back to your body. Because what happens is that if you suddenly go into juggling a crazy schedule into something physical, your body is confused. So the first thing you need to do is just bring it back to the moment and be in the present moment, bring all the awareness back to your body, relax, do the breath work, reset the nervous system. And then there are many things that you can do depending on the time that you have. One of the things that I find super efficient, which I do a lot of times when I'm overwhelmed and it looks really funny, is shaking it all out. Have you ever seen a dog? I don't know if you have a pet. When pets are nervous, they just shake themselves, right? They
Yeah.
shake their fur. That's a natural somatic technique to shake stress out. You can just shake your fingers, your hands, your shoulders, do a quick shake out, and it's playful, it's quick, and it's very efficient. And then any kind of movement, you can do any kind of cross body touches, lifting your right hand and touching it consciously to your left knee. What happens is when you do any kind of a cross body physical activity, you're involving both the hemispheres of your brain. And that tells your body and your nervous system that it is safe and it can reset. And any physical activity you may want to do at that point, whether it's walking, it's cross body touches, shaking it out, or just mindful dancing, you can let the breath be the guide and do it consciously, and you will see how you can naturally calm down. Yeah.
Yeah, those are all like wonderful ways. Firstly, you said breathing, and I at Dark also we host like these events for youth where we focus on like mindfulness through art. And some of them we've done like flower breathing, where you breathe in like you're smelling a flower, and then breathe out like you're blowing out a candle. And there's like box breathing, star breathing. And then I actually really liked the idea of doing exercises that go on both sides of your body that helps both your like brains, I think, activate.
Yes.
Yeah, not sure the science behind it, but I think it's really cool how you mentioned that really helps. You also mentioned like some techniques for helping your nervous system when you're like feeling stressed, and the numbers are scary because in 2025, around 60% of high schoolers in America reported being stressed, and between 2020 and 2025, in 5 years, there was a 30% increase in anxiety. And so, if we are in the middle of a fight, flight, or freeze situation, what are some somatic tools that we can use to calm our nervous system?
Yeah. So there are many tools, and when you were mentioning all the statistics, it just reminded me of all the pressure that we tend to put on ourselves, all the pressure that people tend to put on us. And I remember myself as a teenager as well, and there was so much of pressure to perform, to do well, and you're juggling your personal life, also discovering, trying to figure out who you really are. So before I go into any of the somatic tools, I just want to give this message out to all the young people that whatever they're feeling, and I mentioned this earlier as well, just accept all the emotions that you feel without any judgment or feeling a part of you is broken or anything like that. Because whenever our body is in the survival mode, like you mentioned, fight or flight or freeze or fawn, our body is only trying to protect us. So your body is not broken. If you are feeling anxiety, this is just the body's way of protecting you. Now, going back to the tools, the very first one that we mentioned earlier and we talked about a little bit was breath work. And as you mentioned, there are so many different kinds of breath work that you can do. And but as I mentioned, even if something as simple as just consciously breathing in and breathing out a couple of times can really reset the nervous system. And the second thing I will say is that you can start adding sounds to your exhales. That also really calms the nervous system down. So when you're inhaling, you inhale through your nose, fill up your lungs, and as you exhale, you can add a oh, a ah, a long sound that tells your body it's okay, everything is safe, it's okay to calm down. Second thing is when a body is in the survival mode, it's sensing danger even if there isn't danger in the environment. So, one thing that you can do to let the body know that it's safe is something that we call orienting. Orienting just means that you look around the environment. Let your eyes softly gaze all around you. And then you can mention three things that you can see, two things that you can hear, one thing that you can feel. And when you do this 3-2-1 technique, this signals to your brain and your body that you're safe in the present moment. So that is called orienting, right? Another very quick and efficient thing that you can do is a body check in. So imagine that you're taking an elevator from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet and start to just go down and notice if you feel any sensations anywhere in your body. Maybe your forehead, your throat, your chest, your belly, your legs, your arms. And what that does is that you are bringing awareness to your body without any judgment and noticing where the tension is being held. And whether, like I said, whether it's your jaws or your shoulders or your chest, and simply acknowledging where the tension is held helps to release that tension. Yeah, these are some very quick things that you can do when you feel that your body is stuck in that fight or flight mode.
Yeah, wonderful. So you said one of them was like the 3-2-1 method. So observing three things you can see, two you can hear, and one you can feel. And then also doing like a body scan and seeing where am I feeling tense. I think like for some common emotions like anger, there are some like, oh, your face becomes red. I think your jaw clenches, your hands become in like a fist.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some for anger, but just looking through your body and seeing where am I feeling tensed, and then once you feel that, you put more attention to fixing it. And then the other one I think you mentioned was breath work.
We talked about breath work and we talked about the body check in, which we also call interoception. And then there is orienting, which is the 3-2-1. And yeah, we talked about those three things. And there are many more techniques like that. We can go into detail. Part two.
Yeah, yeah. And I think stress, like as we were talking about, it usually comes, at least for me, when I feel like there's so little time and too much work to do. And one way, at least to fix it, because we can't ever reduce the amount of workload we get from school, but one thing we can do is speeding up our focus and productivity. So how can we use like some of these tools and awarenesses to improve our productivity and focus?
All right. We talked about breath work, right? And we talked about orienting and somatic awareness, which is a really beautiful term because it's one of the four core principles of somatic healing. So there are four core principles. One is somatic acceptance. So I'm going to go a little bit in detail about what somatic acceptance and somatic awareness is. And we will not talk too much in detail about the regulation and release since we've already covered quite a bit of it. But before somatic awareness comes somatic acceptance, which is, like we talked about earlier, accepting your body's trauma responses, which is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I think I touched upon it earlier about how we don't want to look at it as personal failures, right? But as survival mechanisms. So instead of pushing through pain or trying to force healing, you're accepting your body just as is without any judgment. And now, after you have accepted it, we come to what you mentioned, somatic awareness. So instead of getting frustrated with anxiety or anger or stress, you tell yourself that my body is just trying to protect me. So instead of getting frustrated or angry about why is my body reacting or why is my body filled with anxiety or stress, you tell yourself that my body is just trying to protect me. And then you ask, you remember we did an interoception where we took an elevator from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Let's say that you notice that your jaws are clenching, or your hands are making fists, as you had mentioned earlier, or perhaps your chest is feeling too tight. After you bring awareness to that uncomfortable sensation, you ask it, what does my body need right now? And you tune into your bodily sensations, your emotions, and your stress patterns. And we called it interoception, which is the ability to sense internal signals like your heartbeat, your muscle tension, your breathing, or your gut feelings. So, when you develop this kind of self awareness, you can identify where stress and trauma are stored in the body. And without it, physical sensations may be dismissed until they show up as chronic pain or anxiety or fatigue, right? So, the way you can use somatic awareness is, once you have brought attention to that part of your body that is feeling the pain or the tightness, now you have become aware. And as we have talked about it a couple of times before, that the moment you bring awareness, the release already begins. So your body is already starting to feel safe, and your nervous system is already starting to reset. So when you have a calm mind, you have clarity. And when you have clarity, your productivity and your focus is increased. And the other two steps after bringing awareness is somatic regulation, which is learning how to soothe your nervous system. I think we touched upon a couple of these techniques earlier. And then the last principle being somatic release, which is about, letting go of all of the stored tension and trauma. So these are big topics, and I know we'll definitely get into another podcast to explore them in detail. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yeah, yeah, I understood that to get to productivity, first you have to work backwards. So first feeling like what are we feeling in the body? Is there any tension somewhere? And once you're able to feel where it is and then give what your body needs to be able to release it, then I would assume then you're able to focus more on other stuff rather than, oh, my leg hurts, this hurts. And then that ultimately makes you more productive and focused.
Yes, exactly. And there's just one more thing I wanted to touch upon. Since I conduct lots of different kinds of movement workshops, it is all about, as we have talked about, movement, somatic movement, therapeutic dance. A lot of times you can look at a person's body language, a person's posture, and get a little peek into their mental state, if that makes sense. Because how you're feeling internally, whether you're nervous or what your self image is, how confident you are, it shows up in your posture, how relaxed you look, what your shoulders look like, what your jaw looks like, what your hands look like. So we can work reverse as well, right? So if your mental state can affect the way you look, the way your body posture is, the way you move, what if we correct the posture, correct the body movement? It can in turn help with improving the way you feel about yourself. It can help with confidence, and in turn help with mental clarity and productivity, focus, all of that, and help you be successful in whatever you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I find it really cool how you can identify like at least a little bit about how someone is based on their body language. If you have slouched shoulders, you're probably less confident. If you're like sitting upright, then you would be more confident. If your hands are like kept nicely versus like playing and fidgeting, you can tell whether you're anxious or not. And yeah, I think that's really cool. And now I wanted to ask if you're collaborating with Taarika Foundation for our upcoming dance-a-thon event on January 24th. Could you please share more with our audience about this wonderful event?
Yeah. First of all, I'm so honored to collaborate with Taarika Foundation and as well as Bollywood Dance Connection for the upcoming dance-a-thon. This is going to be my very first dance-a-thon, so I'm super excited. And as I mentioned earlier, that I curate workshops for people from all walks of life, where I blend somatic movement, dance, movement therapy techniques, which I also call therapeutic dance, and combined with meditation and breath work, all of this from a bit of a spiritual lens. So for the dance-a-thon, I'll be sharing a small taste of this therapeutic dance approach. And I just wanted to tell everyone who's going to be part of this is that this is not going to be about performance. It's not going to be about getting the steps right or the choreography, but it's going to be more about really connecting to your body's wisdom and moving in a way that feels intuitive and expressive, and also tuning into what your body wants to say. And I'm excited for everyone to be a part of it and everyone to experience this somatic or therapeutic dance with me.
Yeah, this sounds exciting. We've put the details for this event in the podcast description below. And thank you so much, Mrs. Nolly, for coming here today to share this powerful wisdom and practical tips to improve our focus and productivity. A lot of us spend so much time trying to fix our minds while completely ignoring the bodies we live in. You've shown us today that our bodies aren't just things that carry us around. They're the most powerful tool to stay grounded and focused. So for everyone listening, whether you're in the middle of finals, feeling the weight of college apps, or just trying to get through a long day, remember that you have the ability to reset your nervous system with just a few breaths and a simple movement. You don't have to be the victim to your stress. Miss Sonali, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and the work you're doing with Earth and Ether. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Seerat. It was really fun talking to you today.
You are listening to Mindful, Beautiful, and Thriving, a podcast series by Taarika Foundation. As part of our youth series, we will be releasing new episodes every month, so make sure to continue to check those out. We hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we thank you so much for listening.